It was a routine evening in a quiet neighborhood when a simple misunderstanding spiraled into a shocking confrontation. Two police officers, fueled by prejudice, handcuffed a black woman in front of her own home, unaware that their actions would unravel a chain of events exposing their biases and changing their lives forever. Her name was Amara Johnson, a 34-year-old nurse practitioner who had spent her life caring for others. She was known in her community for her warmth, her tireless dedication at the hospital, and her ability to make anyone feel heard. On this particular evening, Amara was returning home from a grueling 12-hour shift at Mercy General Hospital. Her scrubs were slightly wrinkled, her hair pulled back in a neat bun, and her eyes carried the exhaustion of someone who had spent the day saving lives. She pulled her modest sedan into the driveway of her small but well-kept home in a suburban neighborhood just outside the city. The street was quiet, lined with modest houses, each with neatly trimmed lawns and porch lights glowing in the early evening dusk. Amara stepped out of her car, her keys jingling in her hand as she grabbed her bag from the passenger seat. She was thinking about the warm shower she'd take and the leftovers she'd heat up when she noticed a police cruiser idling at the corner of her street. She didn't think much of it. Police occasionally patrolled the area, though it was rare to see them linger. She locked her car and started toward her front door, her mind already drifting to the next day's schedule. "Excuse me, ma'am," a sharp voice called out. Amara turned to see two officers approaching from the cruiser. Officer Daniel Hargrove, a stocky man in his early 40s with a stern expression, led the way. Behind him was Officer Michael Reed, younger, with a tense posture that suggested he was eager to prove himself. Amara's stomach tightened. She had dealt with police before, routine traffic stops, a neighbor's noise complaint, but something about their demeanor felt different. Their eyes were hard, their steps deliberate. "Yes, officers. Can I help you?" Amara asked, keeping her voice calm and professional. She was used to staying composed under pressure, a skill honed from years in the emergency room. Hargrove's gaze flicked over her, lingering on her scrubs, then her face. "We got a call about a suspicious individual in this area. Mind telling us what you're doing here?" His tone was clipped, almost accusatory. Amara frowned, her hand tightening around her keys. "I live here. This is my house." She gestured toward the front door, where a small welcome mat with her initials sat neatly in place. Reed stepped closer, his hand resting on his belt near his holster. "You got ID to prove that?" he asked, his voice carrying an edge that made Amara's heart rate tick up. "Of course," she said, moving slowly to open her bag. "I'm just getting my wallet." She was careful to announce her movements, aware of how quickly situations like this could escalate. She pulled out her driver's license and handed it to Hargrove, who examined it with exaggerated scrutiny. "This address matches," Hargrove said, almost reluctantly, handing the ID back. But instead of stepping back, he crossed his arms. "We still need to ask you a few questions. There've been break-ins around here, and we're just doing our job." Amara's jaw tightened, but she nodded. "I understand, but I've had a long day, and I'd like to go inside. I haven't done anything wrong." Reed smirked, a subtle but unmistakable expression. "Ma'am, it's not about what you've done. It's about what we need to make sure you're not doing." The words hit Amara like a slap. She felt the weight of their assumptions, the way their eyes seemed to judge her before she'd even spoken. She took a deep breath, forcing herself to stay calm. "Officers, I'm a nurse. I work at Mercy General. I'm not a threat. I just want to go inside my home." Hargrove's expression didn't soften. "Turn around," he said abruptly. "We're detaining you until we can verify your story." Amara's heart pounded. "Detain me? For what? I showed you my ID. This is my house." Her voice rose slightly, frustration breaking through her calm exterior. "Don't make this harder than it needs to be," Reed snapped, stepping closer. Before Amara could respond, he grabbed her wrist, twisting it behind her back. The cold metal of handcuffs clicked around her wrists, biting into her skin. Amara gasped, more from shock than pain. "This is ridiculous." "You can't do this," she protested, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and disbelief. She stood in her own driveway, handcuffed, while neighbors began to peek out from behind curtains. The humiliation burned in her chest. Hargrove radioed for backup, his voice calm as if this were routine. "We've got a non-compliant individual here, requesting assistance to verify identity and run a background check." Non-compliant. The word echoed in Amara's mind. She hadn't resisted, hadn't raised her voice until they'd grabbed her. She stood there, cuffed, her scrubs now wrinkled and her dignity fraying with every passing second. She could feel the eyes of her neighbors, some sympathetic, others judgmental. She wanted to scream, to demand justice, but she knew better. She'd seen the news, heard the stories. She stayed still, her breathing shallow, waiting for whatever came next. What the officers didn't know was that Amara's neighbor, Mrs. Clara Thompson, a retired schoolteacher with a sharp mind and a knack for technology, had been watching from her window. Clara had always liked Amara, often chatting with her over the fence about gardening or the hospital's latest fundraiser. When she saw the officers approach, she'd pulled out her phone and started recording. The footage was clear. Amara, calm and cooperative, being handcuffed without cause. Clara's hands shook with anger as she uploaded the video to her X account, tagging local news outlets and adding a caption. "This is my neighbor, a nurse, being wrongfully detained in her own driveway. This is unacceptable." Within minutes, the post began to spread. People shared it, commented, and expressed outrage. By the time the backup officers arrived, the video had already garnered hundreds of views. Amara, still handcuffed, was unaware of the digital storm brewing in her defense. The backup officers, Sergeant Linda Carter and Officer James Patel, stepped out of their cruiser. Carter, a seasoned officer with a reputation for fairness, took one look at the scene and frowned. "What's going on here, Hargrove?" she asked, her tone sharp. Hargrove straightened, clearly annoyed at being questioned. "Suspicious individual. We're verifying her identity." Carter's eyes narrowed as she looked at Amara, still in her scrubs, standing quietly with her hands cuffed. She's in scrubs, standing in front of a house that matches her ID. "What's suspicious about that?" Reed jumped in, his voice defensive. "We got a call about break-ins." She was acting evasive. "Evasive," Amara said, unable to hold back any longer. "I told you I live here. I gave you my ID. I didn't do anything wrong." Carter held up a hand, silencing Reed. She turned to Amara. "Ma'am, I'm sorry about this. Let's get those cuffs off." She nodded to Patel, who quickly removed the handcuffs. Amara rubbed her wrists, her face a mix of relief and lingering anger. Carter turned to Hargrove and Reed. "You two stay here. We're going to have a conversation." Her voice was low, but it carried an unmistakable authority. As Patel escorted Amara to her front door, ensuring she got inside safely, Carter pulled Hargrove and Reed aside. "You better have a damn good explanation for this," she said, her eyes blazing. "Because from where I'm standing, you just detained a woman for no reason other than your own assumptions." Hargrove bristled. "We were following protocol. The call came in, and she matched the description." "What description?" Carter pressed. "A black woman in scrubs. You didn't even run her ID before cuffing her. That's not protocol, that's bias." Reed opened his mouth to argue, but Carter cut him off. "Save it. You're both on desk duty until we sort this out. And trust me, this isn't over." By now, Clara's video had exploded online, amassing thousands of views. Local news stations picked it up, and soon reporters were calling the police department for comment. The department's public relations officer scrambled to draft a statement, promising a full investigation. Community activists organized a protest outside the precinct, demanding accountability. Hashtags like #JusticeForAmara and #EndPoliceBias trended on X, amplifying the story to a national audience. Amara, now inside her home, sat on her couch, still shaken. She hadn't seen the video yet, but her phone was buzzing with messages from friends and colleagues who had. When she finally opened X and saw the footage, her heart sank. There she was, handcuffed in her own driveway, her face a mask of shock and frustration. But the comments, hundreds of them, were overwhelmingly supportive. Strangers called her a hero, praised her composure, and demanded justice. The next morning, Amara woke to find news vans parked outside her house. She didn't want the attention, but she also knew she couldn't stay silent. With the help of a local civil rights attorney, she agreed to a press conference. Standing on her front porch, flanked by her lawyer and a small group of supporters, she spoke clearly and firmly. "My name is Amara Johnson. I'm a nurse, a homeowner, and a member of this community. Last night, I was treated like a criminal in front of my own home for no reason other than the color of my skin. This isn't just about me. It's about every person who has been profiled, harassed, or worse because of who they are. I'm speaking out because this has to stop." Her words resonated, and the crowd erupted in applause. The story gained even more traction, with national news outlets picking it up. The officers, Hargrove and Reed, faced immediate suspension pending an internal investigation. Body camera footage, obtained through a public records request, confirmed what Clara's video had shown. Amara had been cooperative, and the officers had acted without cause. The investigation revealed a troubling pattern. Hargrove had a history of complaints for racial profiling, though none had led to formal discipline. Reed, newer to the force, had been mentored by Hargrove and had adopted similar tactics. The department, under pressure from the public and media, announced new mandatory training on implicit bias and de-escalation. Hargrove and Reed were eventually fired, their actions deemed a violation of department policy. Amara's case sparked a broader conversation in the community. Town hall meetings were held, where residents shared their own experiences with police misconduct. The department implemented a community oversight board, giving residents a voice in policing practices. Amara became an reluctant advocate, speaking at events and working with local organizations to push for systemic change. But for Amara, the victory was bittersweet. She still loved her job, her home, and her community, but the incident had left a scar. She no longer felt safe walking to her car at night. She hesitated before answering her door. And yet, she refused to let fear define her. She continued her work at the hospital, saving lives with the same compassion she'd always shown. She also started a scholarship fund for young Black women pursuing careers in healthcare, determined to turn her pain into purpose. The officers, meanwhile, faced their own reckoning. Hargrove, stripped of his badge, struggled to find work, his reputation tarnished. Reed, younger and less entrenched, enrolled in a program to learn about restorative justice, hoping to make amends. Both men would carry the weight of that evening for the rest of their lives, a reminder of the consequences of unchecked bias. Amara's story didn't end with the news cycle. It lived on in the policies that changed, the conversations that started, and the lives she continued to touch. She wasn't just a victim. She was a catalyst, a woman whose strength exposed a flaw in the system and set the stage for a better future.